creative, and engaging alternative for your podcast, consider Great Tell Me as a suggestion that combines an upbeat and inviting spirit without any background music. Welcome to Tangelic Talks, your go-to podcast from Tangelic, where we dive into the vibrant world of clean energy, development, sustainability, and climate change in Africa. We bring you inspiring stories, insightful discussions, and groundbreaking innovations from the continent making waves in the global community. Tune in and join the conversation toward a brighter, greener future. Let's get started.
Welcome to Tangelic Talks, a podcast at the intersection of energy, equity, and empowerment with your co-hosts, Victoria Cornelio and myself, Jensen Cummings. Victoria, good to see you.
Buddy, welcome.
Yes. Okay. This is episode 1. This is our intro. This is our teaser. We're going to be with you for the next about 15 minutes. We're going to be talking about why we're here. We're going to be talking about what you can expect from Tangelic Talks and Victoria and myself as we go through this journey of understanding energy, equity, empowerment, understanding the mission and vision of Tangelics, the organization, and some of the guests that we're going to have on throughout this. So we're going to tease some of the guests, we're going to tease some of the topics, but we're going to kind of just go through and tell you why Victoria and I are here, what this means to us, and banter a little bit, have a little bit of fun, and give you an idea of the type of shows, the type of education and entertainment that you will be able to get from us. So let's jump right into that. Victoria, a little bit of bio, a little bit of background, a little bit of why you ended up here. Tell us a little of your saga.
I mean, I think we can all agree climate change is a big thing. And I think everyone has, to an extent, some understanding or opinion on it, for sure. I'm just lucky enough that I get to talk on a podcast about it. So that's very much it. But I come from the Dominican Republic, and I grew up in an island where nature and people aren't really separate. We are part of nature. And that sort of brought me up in this idea of we are one. So if the tree that I've been, growing for 100 years in my family is suddenly not doing well, something's happening, right? Climate change is a very visible thing that we get to explore. And coming from that background, and then moving into what I wanted to do with my life, I went to university for politics, majored in more of the environmental side of things, and then went and did my master's on the social political side of climate change. So I'm more interested in not debating if climate change is real, although I'm sure that will come up at some point during this journey, but more about what does this mean for people? How are we being affected? How do we see climate change changing our patterns and our ways of lives and those sorts of things? That's how I ended up here. I want to talk about those things and see how energy equity and empowerment sort of intersect to give us these amazing conversations that you have coming up.
How'd you actually find Tangelic?
Oh, it was really random, actually.
Yeah?
So
Tell me.
I've been working in the nonprofit space for like the last 5 years, and I'm always looking at different things that are happening in this space, that sort of thing. And then I saw Tangelic post something on Instagram, and they had been tagged by another organization I follow. So I was like, wow, this looks brand new. And then I reached out to them just to be like, really cool what you guys are doing. Would love to volunteer, do something with you guys if there's anything coming up. And then they were like, oh, yeah, actually, we have this podcast. I was
Oh,
like,
by the
wow.
way, and it happened
And
fast. And
funnily
then like 2
enough,
weeks later, you and I are here.
that's
And
what I was gonna say. So funnily enough, when I talked to them about the podcast, they were like, "Oh, we have this amazing co-host. His name is Jensen. You're gonna love him." I'm like, "I can't
yeah,
wait. Let's go."
yeah.
Sold me, and you guys are gonna get it really, really soon. Jensen's very lovable.
Yes, that's so great to hear. Isn't that the way that social media is kind of supposed to work? When it's
100%.
at its
Yeah.
peak, it's like people connecting you with other people, organizations, ideas, and the fact
Yeah.
that social media 100% worked. And we're literally here because of an Instagram post. I think
Exactly.
about those kind of things all the time. And that's the way that our
The way
modern
it should
world
be.
works and should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should find something that is compelling and motivating and inspiring and interesting to us
Yeah.
through this lens of Instagram, which sometimes can feel a little bit forced or fake or hollow or any of those
Yeah.
type of things. And the fact that it brought us here is super cool. I love hearing that. And I
But
love
it's like
being able to find that
everything.
out.
It's like
Exactly.
everything. I feel a lot of human tools can be really good and then really bad.
Well, it's
The
human.
tool isn't bad, it's how we
Yeah.
use it. I really believe that.
100%. It can take on the full breadth of human emotion and journey. So, oh, that's really
Exactly.
great to hear. All right, I'll give
Yeah.
everybody a quick kind of background for me. My background is in the restaurant industry. My family has been in the restaurant industry for 125 years. We opened our first restaurant in 1900 in Little Falls, Minnesota, called La Fond House. I've only seen pictures of it. It looked like one of those Wild West saloon town type places. And that was great grandparents, then great grandparents, grandparents had bars and restaurants in San Francisco. And then currently,
Amazing.
my dad's three younger brothers all own restaurants. My younger brother also cooks, he's a chef. And so we just have been in it for a long time. Myself, I
Then, yeah.
started when I was 17, worked my way through the ranks, was a chef owner of restaurants, and found podcasting in 2019. I wanted to give back and highlight stories of what I call unsung hospitality heroes, the humans that really make hospitality so special and such a unique uh, industry, a unique business model, a unique interaction point. And been podcasting ever since, done some 500 plus episodes. So I feel very comfortable in this kind of setting. But this arena, when it came to climate change, was a little bit new to me, a little bit foreign to me. So I was excited about the challenge. On the other side of my family, we've had a business called Moringa for Life for 25 years. We've been cultivating moringa, the miracle tree, which is the most nutritious plant ever tested. You'll see it a lot India and Southeast Asia, a very tropical plant. We've been cultivating it. We've been teaching people all over the world how to grow it. My mother and my two sisters are heroines in the space and have really set the tone for the way we treat nature, to your point, the way that we treat the soil, especially, and the way that we gather in communities to be able to be self-reliant and self-sufficient. And so these two sides of my background really came together and said, I do care about this planet, this blue marble that we're on. I do want to make an impact. I do want to use my voice to be able to bring awareness and attention to all parts of this conversation. And to be able to do that with Tangelic and to be able to do that with Victoria is just like such an honor. So I'm really excited about that side of it. So that's me. That's my
That's really
background.
cool. And that crossover of restaurant industry and then climate change and, having this whole other side of your family do moringa trees and teaching people about how did that happen?
I don't know, honestly.
So
It's like
random.
this like slow burn, and I didn't even
Right.
connect those dots literally until we were having the conversations about our backgrounds, and even in one of the team meetings that we had for Tangelic, Justin asked me to introduce myself and just give us a little bit of, why you're here. I was like, "Oh, why I'm here? Oh, man, that's a
Existential.
big existential question. Why are any of us here?" And all that. And I realized that there was this intersection, and I love that this podcast is at the intersection of energy, equity, empowerment, because I find myself at this intersection in my own life and my own background and my own aspirations to be podcast, to be thinking about the impact internally and externally of the restaurant industry, to be thinking about the impacts of moringa and more broadly with soil biology, vermiculture, permaculture, communities, and that kind of thing. And
Deep into that.
this is exactly the epicenter of those conversations. So just like you, randomly found myself at the epicenter of those conversations, and I couldn't be more excited and grateful for that opportunity. So here we are. Isn't that fun? All right, we're gonna ask each other a couple more questions because we want to get a sense of kind of this banter, give you all an idea of the type of things we're excited to talk about. So for you, the social political side of climate change, what in the world does that actually mean? Talk about some of the specifics or examples of the types of works that you find yourself drawn to, that you find yourself wanting to be a part of and explore. And I'm guessing will reflect in the types of guests that we're having on the show, because they'll be an extension of kind of where you're at and what you're trying
Yeah.
to grow and develop into.
I mean, social political sounds like a really big word. So let's just break it down.
Let's get it.
Social, people, communities, individuals, countries, right? Then political is the systems. How do our systems work? And for example, voting is part of the political system, these sorts of things, right? So by themselves, we do get them. Social political is that intersection of how are the systems affecting society and how is society affecting the systems. And then when you bring in climate change into that, there are systems that are very reliant, very resilient. However, they can't stop climate change
Mm,
because that's not a thing, right? You can mitigate some of the effects of climate change, you can
right.
adapt to some of the effects of climate change. You can't stop climate change necessarily, right? The big issue that now we call it a climate crisis is it's happening at a speed that we just don't have the time to adapt or mitigate. We're in crisis. That's exactly why it's a climate crisis. The climate has been changing forever, right? Like the
Yeah.
world used to be ice at one point. Like climate change happens, but the acceleration with which it's happening, it's overwhelming. And so I want to see how are people going to survive this? And that's why I'm interested in that social political side of it. How is, for example, people's food and well-being? How are people going to get access to energy, access to water, the big displacements that are being predicted, all these sorts of things of how is society's dynamics going to change because of the climate crisis. So that's
Mhm.
sort of where my area is. And then a lot of the work I do is research on climate migration and displacement. Climate refugees is an recognized term. So it's not really a legal term. And a lot of the research I do is trying to find which mechanisms and frameworks do we already have that can protect people forcibly displaced by climate change. Because climate refugees isn't a thing, right? Legally, so to speak. And then other
The
areas
impact on the humans is real and palpable.
is huge. But then you have the other side where it's, for example, businesses. So businesses want to be more sustainable, but how do we do that? That just transition, how do we slowly move away from, I don't know, the way that we manage waste and the way that we do things, maybe switch to LED lights, having sustainability frameworks, teaching people how to better utilize resources. So these conversations of like, how are humans interacting with the planet that is making us either more resilient or it's actually going to
Mm,
not look very nice for us.
mhm.
So yeah, that's sort of where I'm coming from with
All right,
it.
the political side. I want to hover on that for a moment, because
Ooh.
politics are scary words.
Mhm.
Where you are in the UK, where I am in the United States, it's very charged. It's very
Yes.
polarized, 100%. So,
Mhm.
are we a political podcast? How are we navigating that when it comes to we need to be talking about policy,
Yeah.
obviously. We need to be talking about politics. How do
Mhm.
you navigate that without getting yourself into being a politician, right? In the broader
Well,
sense of the word politician, not a professional politician, but you're
yeah.
in
No, I think
politics.
a lot of it. I think I'm a human-centered person. So if you
Okay.
put humans in the center of a conversation, politics, they're not
Mm,
irrelevant, but they're not the main goal. So politics a lot of time is a game of who wins. Who do I convince? Who gets on my side, right? If humans are in the center, it's not about who's right or wrong, is these people need water. How are we going to get them that? These people need education. How are we going to get them that? So I always start from a socio side and then politics comes in depending the system. So say you have people that really need to have access to water, they can't find it. It's really hard, it's weighing down the community and we're about to go into dry season.
mm,
The
mm,
human center approach is these people need water. What are the systems around them, either preventing or enabling them to get water? And then from there, the supports and all that sort of thing. So politics does come in because, again, it is the systems, but it's not political in the sense that it shouldn't be political if people should get help or not.
yeah. And
you know?
we're also not gonna shy away in this podcast from any of those types of questions, and
Exactly.
challenging our own preconceived notions, challenging
Mhm.
those systems, pushing back
Yeah.
against those bureaucracies if
Yeah.
necessary. So we're going to be sometimes kind of uncomfortable on this podcast, and I
Yeah.
think that's an okay place for us to be, because this matters, because this is
And it's
important.
important. I think it provokes thoughts as well, being able to just sit with yourself and be like, "Wow, I I've got nothing." It's for
Yeah.
you to sit down, food for thought.
Yeah.
But I do wonder because you have some experience with that politics and system side with the Moringa project you're involved in,
Mhm.
correct? How do
Yeah,
you see
there's
that
a
coming
lot of that.
along?
There's a lot of that because I see it play out mostly in the differences in politics and
Mm,
socioeconomics and so many
mm,
different factors because of the fact that this company that we have, this mission, this vision started in Southern California, which is very
right.
different than other parts of the country in the United
Mhm.
States. But then we also are working internationally. So we have students and projects all over the world, and my mother especially as the vanguard of this movement of really bringing us back to a holistic approach to growing food, to eating food, to cultivating commerce within smaller communities, especially
Right.
underserved communities. And so working with Rwanda versus India versus Malaysia versus Japan are very different when it comes to politics, right? When it comes to policy, when it comes to social impact, when it comes to their zeitgeist and the way they think about all of these things as a community, as a culture. And I've seen that play out significantly where my mother was recently kind of on a world tour and went to India, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka and was working on some different projects with different students and ambassadors that we have. And the reporting back was the human side, the hope and the humanity of it is the same. There's people who want to see themselves and future generations in their communities thrive. It's the same everywhere in the world. The way they go about getting there, very, very different. Very, very challenging to navigate. So that's the thing that I've seen is if we focus on the social side of what work you're doing, that's where the biggest opportunity is because of the fact that it is so unifying. And it's the politics side of what you're doing and the science side of what's happening that's going to be the difficult part for us to kind of overcome. So that's the way that I kind of see it playing out and have seen it played out as somebody who I've positioned myself in a unique place where I'm a little bit on the sidelines. Reporting on what's happening is the way I've started to think about it. I used to be somebody who was on the field playing the game all the time. And now I'm taking a step back and looking at it from a little bit of a vantage point. And I'm really starting to get
Yeah.
comfortable in that place. It means I have to be a little bit hands off sometimes where I just want to get my fingers dirty, so to speak, and play in the soil, pun intended. And so that's the place that I've found, and that's why we're here kind of doing this podcast. So yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that. All right, that's it. We're gonna kind of wind this down because we want to just talk to you quickly. Give you an idea though, the episodes that we're going to do with our guests, and we have some great guests coming up, and we'll allude to a little bit of that in just a moment, are going to be 30-minute episodes, so very consumable, very easy. We're gonna have the video side of things. We're also gonna have the audio side of things. And one of the aspects we're most excited about, especially Victoria, I know, because this is where she gets to really geek out, is we have blog posts specifically with exclusive content where after we're done doing the audio video side of things, we ask our guests some more questions, some follow-up, we dig a little bit deeper, and that is exclusive content on blog posts at tangeliclife.org. So make sure you always check that out on top of wherever you consume the episodes themselves. We're going to have authors and scientists and astrophysicists and doctors and PhDs all coming on the show to be able to help us navigate these questions we have about climate change, about energy equity and empowerment. What are some of the other themes that you see us dabbling in, getting into a little bit, Victoria?
I mean, this intersection is so big. There's so much we could be talking about. I know we'll be talking about technology a lot. I know that's something a lot of people contest when it comes to climate change as a good or a bad or just as a
Right.
tool. Again, tools can tools are just tools, depends how we use them. So stay tuned for talks about AI, technology. It's
Mm.
talking about entrepreneurship and education as well, and advocacy. How do these things come together? How do we prepare to be more resilient to climate change? Is it through community-led solutions? Is it through frameworks and climate finances? A lot of talk about that. So yeah, there's a breadth of topics we'll be talking about, but we also want to hear from you. Let us know in the comments on Instagram. Let us know in wherever you find us, in the comments on the podcast, video, YouTube's, Spotify. Just let us know what you want to hear as well. Because again, this intersection is huge.
That is well said. We need you to be a part of the conversation because you are a part of this global community. The work that we're speaking about, the topics we're speaking about are going to affect you. So what a great way for us to kick off this show and get into 2025, a big year for what we're working on and what the planet is working on as far as our ability to mitigate some of the climate change risks that we've talked about, and for us to be able to have these meaningful conversations. So once again, this is Tangelic Talks, a podcast at the intersection of energy, equity, and empowerment. Your co-host, Victoria Cornelio, myself, Jensen Cummings. We appreciate you all for tuning in. Cheers.
Let's talk power, let's talk change. From rural lights to brighter days. Equity rising, voices strong. We're building tomorrow where we all belong. Tangelic Talks, energy, equity, pride. Empowering the world, side by side. A spark becomes a fire, a vision that's true. Together we rise, it starts with you.